climate change, brother?
Well, how's it going, man?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Getting blown out by the storms that we have all.
We've been
going on
having
lately
some
and
storms.
stuff, or-
California is getting slammed right now.
We are too. We're getting slammed too.
Well, yeah, I mean, not as bad as they are. They're talking about millions of people maybe getting, affected by this storm.
Well, I was telling you about that. Like, I think the reason why we're having so many storms is because water vapor itself is a greenhouse gas.
Right.
And so what happens is it traps that heat in, and then the hotter the atmosphere gets, the more water vapor you can hold.
It holds more in.
It holds more in. And so the more water vapor you have in the atmosphere, and the more you evaporate, then you start having more storms.
So it's like another cycle. We talked about those cycles before, where it's a cycle that just keeps spiraling. And so the warmer it gets, the more water vapor it can hold, and the more water vapor it can hold, the more storms it has. And so then it just keeps heating up, and then more. And it's just a cycle that keeps on going.
Point number 1. Flaring with the oil and gas industry is being done frequently for several reasons. It is now very prevalent in the Permian Basin.
Well, speaking of fire and getting warm, have you ever heard of flaring?
Yeah, I think I have. I think it happens when you want to get rid of gas.
It's the oil and gas industry flares.
Yeah.
There was a guy that posted a picture on Facebook. It looks like a city. He's in an airplane, and he takes this shot out the window, and it looks like a city down there, And he says, look at this. He goes, this is not a city. Those are flares from the Permian Basin in Texas, which is a huge area. I mean, the Permian Basin.
Well, it goes into New Mexico too, I heard.
It goes quite a bit. It goes up. It's part of the western Texas, part of New Mexico. Well, flaring happens for several reasons. The flaring's been going on for a long time in refineries. Refineries flare often, so it burns off excess pressure that might build up. Or if things aren't balanced right, or if things aren't getting processed correctly, you have to flare off a lot more. Whatever waste they have. So when they're drilling crude out of Texas there, or the Permian Basin, some of the natural gas will come up too. And then they'll flare some of that off instead of just releasing the natural gas in the atmosphere. Remember when the Nord Stream pipeline busted, and you could see all those bubbles coming up out of the water when the pipeline busted, and that's all natural gas.
That one explosion. I remember seeing that. That was
bursting up in there, and that's a huge problem for the atmosphere.
Point number 2. In addition to carbon dioxide, flaring produces other gas toxins, not good for human health.
Well, the other thing about flaring as well is that it's if there's natural gas leaks and you're burning it, if you burn the methane, you also release like benzene and ozone and things, which is not good for your health.
Right.
So the act of just flaring it, and I think that's why these oil companies want to stop flaring altogether by 2030, because they don't want, even though you're producing a greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide has a much lower, a little bit more room potential than methane. You're still forming toxins when you're burning it and all that. So
yeah,
I think that's why the oil companies don't like the idea of flaring, even though this is happening a lot right now.
They want to reduce it.
They want to reduce it.
Point number 3. The reason for excessive flaring in the Permian Basin has to do with permits and transportation of the oil and gas.
Right now, you were talking about this, that the oil companies have kind of foreseen this problem approaching. They've been sort of saying, we're going to have a problem coming up here. We're going to have a lot of excess going on. Right now, most of that flaring is due to excess right now, which is strange, right? Because our current administration has claimed and said that we've given off more permits to drill more wells than ever before. And that's probably true, because if you look out there when that guy's picture, there's a whole bunch of wells out there that have been drilled, and they're pumping oil. But wonder why there's so much flaring, though. Why do you think there's so much flaring going on right now?
Well, from what I heard, I think there's too much of a supply of it. So they built all these rigs. Like, there's been a large number of them, but they haven't been able to build a pipeline that supports it, like to send it out to the places that they need. So if you have all this rigs making oil and natural gas, and you're not pipelining it out, then yeah, you're going to have to flare it, because what else are you going to do with it?
I think you hit it right on the head when you talked about the infrastructure part. There's not enough pipeline to transport what they're drilling right now. So they've given out more well permits to drill more wells to keep the supply up, but they're unable to transport it right now. There's not enough infrastructure to pipe it right now. So that's the problem. Anyway, so right now it's at an unprecedented high. It was at a low in 2019, I think, is what I read, and it's been steadily going up starting about 2020.
Point number 4. In addition, they passed stricter pipeline safety regulations that make it more difficult to transport the gas.
And you talked about they put some regulations on that in 2020, right?
Yeah, there's an
pipelines.
act. There's some kind of like safety act that they had.
Let me see if I get this right. It's
Yeah, they did it in 2020, and I think it was in response to some accident that happened. Some guy got blown up or something happened. It was an unfortunate accident. But yeah, since that time they've had this act that comes out, and then what it does is it puts more regulations on the natural gas pipeline so that there's not accidents anymore. There's not leaks. So there's mandatory maintenance, mandatory repair schedules. They have to do better leak detection.
yeah, I think it's called Protecting Our Pipeline Infrastructure and Safety Act, something like that.
Yeah, that
I think that's
sounds right and stuff. Yeah.
I think. Well, I think that applies to the existing pipelines, right? Not the new ones.
I would think so too, but I think if you're going to build more pipelines, you still have to have that as well.
Good thing though is I'm glad you talked about that act because they put. You said they put some more additional regulations on in 2021, perhaps too, and in addition to this act, that may be even more restrictive, which is on one hand is good because it's helping it's forcing the oil and gas companies to fix all the infrastructure leaks and things, but it's also slowing things down. So now there's more waste than you intend to have, even though in the long term it might help out with the waste, but for right now it's just a lot of waste going on.
Point number 5. Yet another reason for the flaring in the Permian Basin could be the inability to make liquefied natural gas due to regulations.
I wonder what's holding up the new pipelines. Is it this act or is it something else?
Ever since the Ukraine-Russia war, the United States has become the #1 provider of liquefied natural gas. And so in Texas, a lot of that can come in the New Mexico area, that can come from the Permian Basin. So I think during that time, after the Ukraine-Russia war happened, for some reason the government stopped some of the permits to make this liquefied natural gas. Okay, so if you're going to stop the permits and stuff and all that, then you're going to have a problem constructing your pipelines. I think they did that also with there's actually these compressors as well. Like they're supposed to put in more compressors and stations for the compressors, but that didn't happen. They're for some reason they weren't able to build those. Like because the rigs, if you're going to make more rigs, you need more compressing stations to send it on to, and they had problems with that as well.
Or at least it's not happening as quick as they anticipated, probably. To say the least, because they have all this crude they're to drill in, but they don't have. They probably expected there to be the infrastructure in place by now, but it's not, and so it's a lot of it's just being flared off in waste, unfortunately.
Point number 6. Some oil companies have already anticipated the need to stop flaring and reduce methane leakage. Therefore, they are spending a lot of money to fix the problems, but it will take time.
Now, this is going to continue to go up, I understand, until at least summer of 2024.
Yeah, and it may last a while. A lot of these oil companies have anticipated this, and they don't want there to be any flaring by 2030. So, for example, ExxonMobil and I think BP, they're taking measures to fix the methane leaks and do detection with advanced sensors and cameras. And they're going to, repair their equipment, and they're spending billions of dollars on this, so that they make sure that this flaring is not a problem anymore. But for right now, for some reason, there's just too much supply, and they don't have this all in place yet. They're expecting to do it, but because the Inflation Reduction Act just happened like a year or two ago, right?
Right.
And so that's the methane tax. So now all these oil companies are scrambling, like, what are we going to do? Because now we're going to get charged $900 to $1,500 per ton of methane. Like the carbon dioxide tax is only supposed to be $100 per ton. So you're talking 15 times the amount.
Up to 15 times.
If you don't fix your methane problem and stuff.
Yeah, so that's one reason maybe why they're flaring a little bit too. They're wanting to reduce a little bit of their methane output.
Point number 7. Yet another factor may be that we need more specialized workers such as pipe fitters and welders to construct them.
Yeah, this methane tax and how to fix it is not going to be done overnight. We kind of have a shortage of, specialized workers that can do that. What's that pipeline up?
The Keystone.
The Keystone pipeline. They laid off those workers, and to have them build these pipelines, you need these pipe fitters and welders, and there may not be a lot of them, as many as we think there are. So as far as that can do this, and
it's a pretty specialty field. I understand as well too. So that may be another holdup. I don't know. That's a good point. There may be a shortage of workers in that field since there's been a discouragement of getting into that field. Like, hey, we're gonna keep cutting oil and gas. We're gonna keep reducing until we get down to net zero and stuff. And so maybe people aren't going into that field so much anymore because they see the writing on the wall too. But it's still right now. That's a necessary thing to have, and so. It's unfortunate. It's one of those transition periods. It's going to be kind of tough.
Point number 8. Similar to methane flaring, some landfills also flare off methane, but they usually earn carbon credits for it.
Now they do carbon reduction projects, I guess, for carbon credits. There has been a movement for example, in landfills and all that. They will try to burn the methane and turn the carbon dioxide, and they get credits for that, because if the methane just releases naturally from the landfills, then they have to, it's more of a greenhouse gas problem. So there are projects where they're doing that, but I don't think the oil industry wants to do that on purpose to get the carbon. They're trying to get away from there being methane, but I mean obviously they're going to save money if they burn that methane off, if they can't do anything with it, because otherwise it'll leak, and then they'll have to pay all this. So now the methane tax is going to go from, it's $900 right now per ton, but it's going to raise up to by $1,500 by 2026.
Point number 9. A method called enhanced oil recovery puts carbon dioxide back underground for oil refineries, wells, and processing.
You were talking about how they've in their infrastructure and in the oil and gas companies, they've learned how to capture the CO2 and then pipe it back down into the ground, right? So
yeah, they've been doing that for a while in Texas. I think for decades they've been doing it. It's called enhanced oil recovery.
Right.
And so at their refineries or where they're processing the oil or getting it, they have a big underground infrastructure to pump that carbon dioxide back underground when they're processing the oil. And that mixes in with the oil in their ground and produces more oil. So they actually get millions of gallons pumping carbon dioxide back under the ground.
Okay, wow. Well, that's good. That's good. So, and it saves it from going out in the atmosphere.
Yeah, it saves it from going out in the atmosphere. Yeah. And they get these credits for it. I guess it's like that $50 credit. But yeah, they get $50 per ton credit, I think, for pumping it underground as well, the oil companies.
Point number 10. In summary, there is a lot of waste when we decide to flare methane instead of continuing it or using it for homes, businesses, or other purposes.
It's a shame that all of this natural resources is just being flared off right now and not being used for something like you're saying, for compressed natural gas for the world. We could be doing that. We could be piping some of this natural gas into the homes in the region. There'd be a lot of things we could do with it, but it's just being wasted right now, unfortunately. Well, okay, so maybe we can hope for the future to have less flaring. Maybe we can capture more natural gas, and we'll be able to fix all the infrastructure problems. And so I think that'll go a long way into reducing greenhouse gas output, from the Permian Basin, and it'll help conserve our natural resources and keep fuel prices down. So.
Yeah.
I hear you talking, brother. That's good. Yeah. Well, good words, I think. All right. Well, on that, anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, that's good.
I think that was I think that was good. All right. Well, we will sign off then and tell our viewers
until the next time.